So guys, Hamza here, and आज आप देख रहे हैं Random and More का second episode. अब coming to the main point of the video, हमारी आज की वीडियो का टॉपिक है इंटर वर्सेस ए लेवल्स, एंड बेसिकली ये उन ओ लेवल स्टूडेंट्स को गाइड करने के लिए जो कि मेडिसिन में जाना चाहते हैं और दे आर बिट कंफ्यूज्ड अबाउट देयर फ्यूचर कि क्या ए लेवल्स में कंटिन्यू करें या इंटर में स्विच हो जाए. सिंस वी ऑल आर ए लेवल स्टूडेंट्स तो थोड़ा सा बायस हो सकता है.
Alright, so अगर हम इंटरमीडिएट करते हैं, so let's just talk about कि क्या एडवांटेजेस होंगे. So firstly जो हमारा एंट्रेंस एग्जाम है, सही है, तो एंट्रेंस एग्जाम मोस्टली इट्स योर इंटरमीडिएट सिलेबस बेस्ड. तो जो इंटर के स्टूडेंट्स होते हैं दे हैव एन एज बिकॉज दे हैव बीन स्टडीइंग द सेम सिलेबस फॉर द पास्ट 2 years. All they have to do is they need to revise it and they need to practice a few past papers and they're good. अच्छी तैयारी हो जाती है. Whereas the A-level students उनको 6 books दोबारा ख़रीदनी पड़ती है, दोबारा क्या for the first time ख़रीदनी पड़ती हैं. Then उसके बाद उनको रट्टा मारना पड़ता है. There are so many new things that they have to study all over again, जिस तरह की kingdoms and phylums हैं. And then अक्सर ये हुआ है entry tests में, जिस तरह के जो physics के portion में जो example questions given होते हैं वो ditto same आपके उसी में दिए जाते हैं entrance exam में with the same option, so it's easy for the inter kids to attempt those questions. इसके अलावा जो सूरज और आयत आपके फिजिक्स की बुक में गिवन है, एक बार KMDC के टेस्ट में उन्होंने एक सूरा दे दी, उसकी ट्रांसलेशन दे दी और कहा कि जी ये किस सूरा से है. So yeah, so the inter kids they have an edge.
The second advantage of doing inter is in its affordability. And you can look at this in 4 aspects. Number 1, you have your college fees of inter, which are much cheaper than A-levels. Even if you go for a private college of inter, it could easily cost you 10,000. Whereas if you go for a government college, it's practically free. And in comparison, A-levels college, you're gonna have to pay, like, the average rate is like 60,000 per 2 months. So you're gonna have to pay 30,000 per month, which is much more than inter. And even if you're on 100% scholarship, it's like it could cost you 10,000. The second aspect of all of this, the second aspect of affordability, is how cheap the coaching center of inter is in comparison to A-levels. The coaching center of A-levels could range you from 4,000 to 11,000 depending on the area and the teacher. Whereas inter, it's much cheaper and it's like what, 2,000, 2 to 3,000. The third aspect of how cheap inter is the cost of its textbook. I remember right after my CIEs when I had to start studying for inter and I bought these inter textbooks for the first time. I bought 6 textbooks for less than 1,000 rupees, original. And yes, okay, like the quality of original is really pathetic in comparison to A-levels, but still it's original. And A-levels, one book, first copy, is like more than 1,000. So yeah, like that's the third aspect. The fourth aspect is how cheap the inter's examination fees is in comparison to A-levels. I remember when I had to pay my the examination fee of pre-medical biochemistry physics, it cost me around 50 to 60,000. Whereas in inter, it's like a fraction of that, and it could cost you 5 to 6,000 for pre-medical. So it's much cheaper. The third advantage of doing inter is that you could graduate a year earlier as compared to A-level kids.
Bilkul, because those of you who do your metric and then do your inter, you're basically saving a year. Because your metric hota hai, it's your grade 9th and 10th, whereas your O-levels is your grade 9, 10th and 11th, and uske baad A-levels aata hai. So you basically save a year when you do your inter.
And graduating earlier means you get to marry earlier, and marrying earlier means you guys are more fertile.
Bilkul, these are just roughly logic.
And
what do you think, Hamza?
Now, जब हमने इंटर के सारे एडवांटेज देख लिया, I think it's time to see इंटर disadvantages.
Now we're going to talk about the disadvantages of doing inter after your O-levels.
Bilkul, because when you shift from your O-levels to inter, it's so difficult adjusting because the way you've been brought up, O-levels में it's so different than how inter kids are brought up.
Like
Because
in O levels, we're encouraged to participate in MUNs, do sports. We have a lot of extracurricular activities, and in metric, you don't. So because of that, you develop a different personality, and it gets really hard to adjust.
yeah, and then इसके साथ साथ it's also very difficult adjusting academically because the way you've been taught in O-levels is like के concept लो, फिर उसको apply करो, analyze,
You're made to
for
think by yourself. Whereas in inter, it's just all worked out. Like it mostly
You know
is.
कि इस question का answer इतना है, इस paragraph से इस paragraph तक
And just do this much past paper, memorize it, memorize this text, and you'll get the answer. Like
So
you'll
there
get
is
your
no
mark.
understanding or concept involved.
Along with that, you have a lot of corruption in the inter system.
Yeah, because होता ये है कि you work so hard to get your grade, right? But somebody else pays and then they get your grade. So you don't get what you deserve. Right?
As in marks can be bought in inter. As in O levels, that does. In A levels, that doesn't happen.
CIE is very fair, unlike ये inter का जो system है. इसके अलावा ये होता है कि you work so hard throughout these 2 years and if still you don't get good grades because you have a hard time adjusting starting
Socially and academically. As in switching to inter is no guarantee that you're gonna
get good
get into
grades.
medicine or something. Like because you switch, you might even destroy your grades, and you might not get the grades you deserve. You don't fulfill your full potential because you have such a hard time adjusting. You don't focus so much academically so that's a big factor.
Alright, so these were the advantages and disadvantages of doing inter.
And stay tuned for part 2 of this video, in which we're going to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of doing A levels.
Yeah, so what we want you guys to do is
Like
share.
and subscribe, and make sure to study.
Yes.